I tested the best cameras for photography, and I realized all good cameras have 5 key things in common. So in this video, I'm going to show you the best cameras for photography and help you understand which of these 5 key things you need for your shooting style and budget. And I'll leave links down below for the best pricing on the cameras we talk about today. Now, the first thing we all look for in a photography camera is resolution and sensor quality, because we all want stunning photos. And one of the best cameras for this is the Sony a7C Mark II, because not only does it have a high resolution sensor, but it also has the other 5 key things you should look for in a camera. Thanks mainly to its high resolution 33 megapixel full frame sensor and a brand new processor, you get incredibly detailed photos, and this camera is also pretty decent in low light thanks to that sensor. And this covers our first key features, and that's making sure you have a high resolution sensor for good image quality. And the a7C Mark II also shoots pretty fast, as high as 10 frames per second, which is great for any kind of action shots or fast moving subjects, but you can also shoot 44 raw photos in a row or up to 1,000 JPEGs in a row before this camera needs a break. And that covers our second key thing to look for, is how fast can your camera shoot and how long can it shoot for, and the a7C Mark II does a pretty good job. And as a side note, the a7C II also shoots really good video, 4K up to 24 and 30 frames per second, with even 4K at 60 frames per second with a 1.6 times crop, and full HD up to 120 frames per second for slow motion if you want to shoot a bit of video. But the third thing that you should look for in your camera, and it's often overlooked, is autofocus. And the a7C has some of the best autofocus in the industry. The a7C actually has AI-based autofocus that can intelligently recognize subject matter like people, animals, cars, insects, planes, and can intelligently track the autofocus to that, so it's very rare to miss your shot or get something out of focus. And that's also the third thing you should look for in your camera, is good autofocus, because if you don't have good autofocus, your images will not turn out well. Now, you could have the prettiest camera with the fastest frame rates, but there's one thing that people often forget, and that's design, because you want to make sure the camera body is right for your shooting style. The a7C is surprisingly compact for such a powerful full frame camera, with a really nice, robust, and satisfying hand grip, and the button layout and menu layout is super simple, making this camera a breeze and a pleasure to use. However, one thing that it is missing is a built-in flash, which isn't really something you see on a premium camera like this. The a7C II also has a side articulating screen that allows for touch autofocus and touch functionality, so you can use this camera very similar to a smartphone if that's what you're used to. And it also takes Z batteries, which should last you a pretty long time, and these are the same batteries you see in pro cameras. And if you haven't guessed yet, the fourth thing to look for in your camera is the body and design, to make sure that it fits your shooting needs. And the a7C Mark II also comes in at a really attractive price. You get incredible value for your money, which is the fifth aspect to look for in a camera, and that is, are you getting a good value for your money, and does it fit your budget? So if you're looking for a powerful camera that can pretty much shoot anything, but you still get it in a compact body that you can pretty much take anywhere with you, the a7C Mark II is an amazing buy. Now, some of you guys might be on a tighter budget and you want a more affordable camera without having to sacrifice image quality or features. And the Sony a6400 might be exactly what you're looking for. It has a 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is a healthy amount of resolution and perfect for this type of camera. But this sensor is also surprisingly good in low light, because most Sony cameras are. And the a6400 is also one of the few cameras that actually still has a built-in flash, which is becoming a pretty rare thing in premium cameras like this. And it can also shoot 11 frames per second, which is about the same as the a7C Mark II, and it can also shoot 44 raw photos or 116 JPEGs in a row before it needs a break. And this is good for, once again, any kind of action, fast-moving subject matter. And because the a6400 is a Sony camera, it also has really great autofocus. It's not the same fancy AI-based autofocus from the a7C Mark II, but it's still ultra reliable with very good tracking. And the body of the a6400 is really small enough to fit into a jacket pocket or just keep on you at all times. And it also comes with a pretty decent beginner lens, which is a 16 to 55 millimeter lens. But if you have the money, I recommend actually upgrading it to the Sigma 18 to 55 millimeter zoom lens for sharper images. And one thing that I love about the a6400 is that the body is all metal, so it's a really robust and well-built camera. On top of that, it has a really good button layout and menu layout. But one thing that some of you guys may not love is that while it does have a rear tilt screen for high angle and low angle shots, it only flips up to the top when you're trying to record yourself, so it doesn't come out to the side, which is not as ideal. But the biggest problem with this is that when you try to put a mic on this camera, it's actually going to cover the screen. And sadly, the a6400 doesn't have the same touch functionality on the screen, and it also has smaller batteries which won't last you as long, so you need to make sure you have a few spares. Overall, if you're looking to pick up a budget camera that still provides really solid image quality, the a6400 is a great buy because it has great image quality, solid body and design, great autofocus, it can also shoot really fast, and it comes in at a great price despite the few shortcomings. Now, when it comes to photography, some people already have a camera that looks really good. Instead, what they want is speed to shoot things like sports, action, wildlife, and fashion. And if that sounds like you, I actually have two camera recommendations for you, and that is the Canon R6 Mark II and the Canon R7. The Canon R6 Mark II has a 24 megapixel full frame sensor, and the Canon R7 has a 32 megapixel APS-C size sensor. The Canon R6 Mark II is a full frame sensor and will give you a wider field of view when getting your shots, basically making your wide shots look even wider. And this might be better for something like fashion, something where you want to get as wide of a shot. And the R7 has an APS-C size sensor, which is going to give you a tighter, more zoomed in shot. And this would be better for far away subjects like wildlife or sports. In my opinion, both of these sensors have a really healthy amount of resolution, and they're both really good in low light, even as high as 12,800 ISO. But the most important thing about these cameras is how fast they are. The R6 Mark II can shoot at 40 frames per second electronic shutter mode and 12 frames per second in mechanical shutter mode. And the R7 can shoot between 12 to 15 frames per second mechanical shutter mode and as high as 30 frames per second electronic shutter mode. Being able to shoot higher than 24 frames per second basically means you're shooting faster than video. In this way, it's basically impossible to miss your shot. And both of these cameras do have some rolling shutter, but very little. Now, they both have a high resolution sensor and incredibly fast shooting speed. If you're going to be shooting that fast, you need to make sure you have your third thing, which is good autofocus. And the autofocus in both of these cameras is incredible. It's AI-based autofocus to keep up with those insane shooting speeds, and has subject detection for animals, people, and vehicles, and it does a phenomenal job with subject tracking. It's really rare to see an out of focus shot with either of these cameras. And one thing that I love about both of these cameras is the body and design. It's really solid build quality with a really nice hand grip. The button layout and ergonomics is basically 10 out of 10. Canon is known for making really well designed products. And they both have a side articulating screen for touch controls, but also touch autofocus. And the battery life on both of these cameras is very, very good. So if you're looking for a powerhouse of a camera that can deliver both speed and performance, the R6 and R7 are two of the best cameras that you can get. And in terms of price, this is actually the most affordable price point for a camera that can shoot at such a high frame rate. You simply need to decide if you want a full frame camera or an APS-C camera. Now, the most important camera on this list is a camera that I specifically put on here for my people, the artsy crowd. Those of us who want to do more than just take photos. We want to create art, we like shooting film, and we want to be intentional with our photography. And for us, we have the Fuji X-T5, one of my favorite cameras of all time. What makes the X-T5 so impressive is the 40 megapixel APS-C size sensor, which is actually the highest resolution APS-C sensor out today. And this gives you an incredible amount of detail and sharpness in all of your photos. And because of the unique design of the Fuji X-Trans 5 sensor, it actually gives you the image quality and low light performance of a full frame camera, but in an APS-C camera. So not only does it have an incredible sensor, but it also has phenomenal colors, especially if you're someone that likes to shoot film. The Fuji X-T5 actually has built-in film emulations that not only mimic the colors of film, but also the contrast value and tonal property of a film look, giving your images a unique look right out of camera before any editing, and it's also really fast. It can shoot as high as 15 frames per second in mechanical shutter mode and 20 frames per second in electronic shutter mode with a 1.29 times crop, and these specs are actually pretty close to the Canon R7. And the autofocus on the Fuji X-T5 is really good if you're using it for photography and you're someone that's more so slowing down and you're not really looking for a sports camera, because it doesn't have any AI-based modes for tracking subjects like animal, people, and vehicles. This is more of a slower, more intentional photography camera, and the autofocus is really meant for that. Now, my favorite thing about the X-T5 is the body and design. It has a command dial at the front and back like a typical camera, but it also has an ISO dial and a shutter dial at the top, so you can use this more like a typical film camera, and it also has an aperture ring on most Fuji lenses, so you can really get into that old school photography feel, be really intentional with your shooting, and I personally find it way more fulfilling to take photos like this than to just whip out my camera and go snap, snap, snap. It's not that fun. However, one disappointing thing about the X-T5 is that it only has a tilt screen and it doesn't have a side articulating screen, which would have been better for a modern camera. But the ergonomics and layout are perfect, and it also has a really big battery. The Fuji X-T5 is a powerhouse of a camera that gives you full frame quality in an APS-C camera, and it still has incredible image quality, great colors, really good autofocus for the type of camera this is, great body and design, which is why I love this camera, and it comes in at a way lower price than most of its competing cameras. So if you're looking for a good deal and trying to get that film photography feel, the X-T5 is the best camera for that. And if you want to check out the X-T5 or any of the other cameras we talk about today, make sure to check out the links in the description down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.